Good morning to all of you. We continue today what we started Wednesday. Today we are the 3rd of April 2020, and we will continue our reading and lecture on reading of and lecture on the civil religion in Rousseau's social contract. If you remember, last time we listed, according to Rousseau, the three kinds of religion. The first kind is the religion of the man, celle de l'homme, du citoyen. The second, the religion of the citizen. And then the mix, kind of strange third kind, called the religion of the priest. We saw what are the good points of each, the bad points of each. It appears the third kind, that of the priest, has practically no good points, so it's quickly shoved aside. The second, that of the citizen, we saw it has, which is close to theocracy, of course, has some good sides in that it makes people attached to their country, but it leads also in its bad side to intolerance, superstition, credulous people become credulous, in other words, gullibility, if you like, and so on. The third one, which is the first one considered, the religion of man, is the original Christianity. Again, it has its good sides, its bad sides. It is a religion in which everyone is the brother of everyone considers everyone their brother. The bad side is, of course, that its kingdom is not in this world, so even though its members do follow the rules of the countries they are in, still they are never going to be what we call, the word is from me here, of course, patriotic. They're not going to have this ardor for victory for their country. So they're going to be easily defeated by those who do. And of course, the other bad thing about it is that since everyone considers everyone a brother and everyone is at peace with everyone is good in other words, any bad person, any malicious ambitious person, if you like, will be able to manipulate everyone and rule over them. Okay. So this is where we stopped last time, and I think we can now jump to page 89. There is just one paragraph I'm skipping on the Crusaders and the Crusades being not Christian in that original sense. So you can, of course, go over that yourselves as you are reading the whole thing. So page 89 now in your reader. Let's start. But leaving political considerations aside, let us return to the important question of right. Okay? So we're going to talk now about right and define the principles involved in right. You know the very famous dichotomy of rights and duties. You have certain rights, حقوق, right? Al-haq, حقوق, ما هي حقوقي, and then you have certain duties. You don't only have rights but duties. So here we're talking about the measure of right. What is right under the social contract in a country or a nation? So, let's read the whole paragraph first again. But leaving political considerations aside, let us return to the important question of right and define the principles involved in it. The right given to the sovereign over subjects by the social pact or contract does not exceed the limits of public utility, as I have said. And read with me the footnote 1 underneath, you can see. In the Republic, says the Marquis d'Argenson, everyone is perfectly free to do any act that is not harmful to others. That is the precise limit. It would be impossible to define it more exactly. I have been unable to resist the pleasure of quoting this manuscript work at times, even though it is not publicly known, so as to honor the memory of a man of integrity and renown who even as a minister back then continued to be a true citizen at heart and retained his sound and upright beliefs about the government of his country. So we continue. Subjects, therefore, are not accountable to the sovereign for their opinions, except insofar as these opinions are of concern to the community. Now, it does concern the state that each citizen should have a religion which makes him cherish his duties, but its dogmas of this religion do not concern the state or its members except to the extent that they relate to morality and to the duties that a man who professes that religion is obliged to fulfill towards others. Everyone may have whatever additional opinions he wishes, without the sovereign having any jurisdiction over them. For since it has no authority in the other world, the fate of its subjects in the life to come, whatever it may be, is not its affair, provided they are good citizens in this one. Okay, this is one of the finer paragraphs in Rousseau's social contract dealing with civil religion on chapter 8. What is Rousseau saying here? First of all, let us remember once again what the sovereign here is. Okay? The sovereign, unlike Hobbes, and I mentioned this last time, is the people. So the right given to the sovereign over the subjects is like saying it's the right of the people over the people, right? Now, this right is, of course, given in a specific way. How this is done, for those of you who will read the social contract, it is done through deputies. In other words, let's suppose in Lebanon, you have deputies in parliament, right? So for the city of Tripoli, you'll have deputies. For the city of Mina, you will have deputies. For the different parts of Kura, you'll have deputies, and so on, who meet in parliament. So in other words, they represent the deputies, hence the expression House of Representatives, if you like. And so this House of Representatives votes the laws, and then of course there's going to be an executive, which is what we call government today, right? So the government then has a job is to apply these laws, to make sure they are applied, and so on. So let's keep this in mind, that this sovereign represents in the end the people, right? But of course it is a sovereign, there are rights to the sovereign, and they are applied by the people to the people because they have been voted, and so the government that is in place is the one applying them. This is representative democracy at its simplest. So there's a right given to the sovereign over the subjects by the social pact, but what kind of rights does the sovereign, and so the executive in the end, in its application of what the sovereign voted as laws, if you like, what the parliament voted as laws, what are these rights? Can we get involved in everything that everyone has to deal with in their daily lives? How you speak to your children, how you speak to your wife, how you deal with your animals, how you deal with your house, how you decorate your house. To what extent does the sovereign have rights? So, does the whole have a right over the individual? Rousseau tells us the right given to the sovereign over the subject by the subjects by a social compact should not exceed the limits of public utility. In other words, if it does not involve something that will affect the public, so that will affect everyone else that composes the society, then the sovereign does not have the right to intervene, to decide things. He's not going to have the right to decide what color you color your bedroom, for example. And here is a famous sentence by Rousseau, which he takes from Argenson in the footnote. Everyone is perfectly free to do any act that is not harmful to others. Okay. Another way that Rousseau will say it is, my freedom stops there where the others begins. So in other words, when my freedom is going to affect someone else in their freedom, this will be the limit of mine. I am not allowed to intervene in other people's lives unless intervene in other people's lives if my freedom is going to affect negatively that of the life and in the life of others. My freedom stops where the others' freedom starts. So there's always some kind of, if you like, checks and balances. The expression used in American politics, of course, that I shouldn't be using here. But it's a kind of this occurring, right? When I do things, I have to, in other words, think. If I take an example, I'm going to cut a tree in my garden, but this tree goes into the garden of another person, or maybe this tree has different fruits that have specific kind of flower that the bees, so in spring, that the bees of my neighbor need to produce honey, right? So whatever I do with my tree is going to affect my neighbor's bees, and so the honey that he can produce. In that case, I have to take into consideration whether I cut the tree or not, to plant maybe something else or to build something. Okay? If it doesn't affect my neighbor, then of course there's no need to worry about that. Okay? So my freedom stops where that of the other begins. Okay? And so in this sense, we are not accountable to the sovereign. I continue to read. The subjects are not accountable to the sovereign for their opinions, except insofar as those opinions are of concern to the community. In other words, if I have a certain opinion about any topic I like, if this opinion is not a concern of the community, then we are not accountable for it. Nobody's going to come and tell us, why did you choose this and not that? You are not supposed to. You're supposed to do that, not this. So again, if I decide to plant a certain kind of flower instead of another in my garden, no one should worry about this. This is of no concern to the community. But if my planting certain flowers will kill the bees who don't like this kind of flower, then if we use honey in my community and the honey will be affected, there will be less production of honey, then of course I am accountable. Okay? So anything that I can have as an opinion, political, social, etc. I don't like this president. If it doesn't really affect the community so much, if it's of no concern to the community, then I'm not accountable to the sovereign for it. Okay. Rousseau continues, now it does concern the state that each citizen should have a religion which makes him cherish his duties. Okay. So we go now once again, because this is of course the topic of this chapter 8, we go into religion once more. Of course, all of this is to talk about this topic. So in chapter 8, it does concern the state that each citizen should have a religion which makes him cherish his duties. So we should have a religion. It means what? It means something that decides how we are linked to certain others in the community. Religere in Latin, to be linked to others under a God, under a divinity. Okay. Now, it is of concern also the state should examine the religion of each citizen insofar as it affects his duties to the community, to the state, to the country. Right? So it does concern the state then that each religion that is accepted should make the one cherish his duties, not hate them. His duties toward others, toward his neighbors, toward his country, etc. Okay? If you have a religion that tells you you should not obey the laws of your country, there's a problem. So he has to cherish his duties in his country. But the dogmas do not concern the state or its members. So the dogmas, whether you believe that you will live in, I don't know, in paradise 1 million years and be transferred to another place in heaven, or you have to, hell can be this way or that way. It doesn't matter what these dogmas are, whether you believe there's a trinity or no trinity. So these dogmas do not concern the state or the other subjects, the members of the state, except to the extent that they relate to morality. Only then when it's a question of morality, because morality, of course, is going to affect how I live with others. And to the duties that a man who professes that religion is obliged to fulfill towards others. So the religion then should help the person respect the duties, do their duties, cherish their duties. It should have a morality that helps to live with others. So, for example, helping the poor and so on. Not to be an Aztec, for example. You know, in Aztec religion, they used to sacrifice the hearts of their children. So something like this, of course, a religion like this would be refused in the state. Okay? So we need one that has a good morality, a morality that helps to live with others, that helps preserves the freedom of others. Okay? And a morality, in addition to the morality, this religion should relate in some way, or should allow for the duties that a man has toward others to be fulfilled. So not to be refused. So you can't have a religion that says, okay, I don't know, of a particular X religion, and my religion says the ones in my religion are the ones I help, not everyone else. I should refuse others. Not only that, I should maybe attack them. No. So you have to fulfill your duties towards others. It's important to have a religion like that. And you have to cherish these duties and to have a good morality. Okay? So everyone, of course, I continue, may have whatever additional opinion he wishes without the sovereign having any control, jurisdiction over them. Okay. For since the sovereign has no authority in the other world, of course, after you die, the sovereign cannot have an authority over you in heaven. The fate of his subjects in the life to come, whatever it may be, is not its affair, provided they are good citizens in this one. Okay. We move then to the next paragraph. There is therefore a purely civil, so finally Rousseau gets to the point of this chapter. There is therefore a purely civil profession of faith, the articles of which it is the business of the sovereign to determine. Not exactly as religious dogmas, but as sentiments of sociability, without which it is impossible to be either a good citizen or a loyal subject. We read the footnote. When Caesar spoke in Catiline defense, he tried to prove the doctrine of the mortality of the soul. In order to refute him, Cato and Cicero did not waste their time philosophizing. They contented themselves with showing that Caesar's words were those of a bad citizen, and that the doctrine he was putting forward was pernicious to the state. And this, not the question of theology, was the proper question for the Roman Senate to decide. We continue. Although it, the sovereign, cannot force anyone to believe them, it can banish from the state anyone who does not believe them. He can be banished not for impiety as in a normal religion, but for being unsociable. Okay? And for being incapable of cherishing the laws and justice sincerely, or of sacrificing when necessary his life for his duty. And if, having publicly accepted these same dogmas, any person conduct himself as if he did not believe them, let him be punished by death. He has committed the greatest of crimes. He has lied before the law. This is one of the more controversial paragraphs in Rousseau's social contract. Much has been written about it. Particularly because of this last part. Let us consider together. Here, it's a kind of civil religion that Rousseau is calling for. So not a religion based on certain dogmas instituted by church, on certain articles of faith that are kind of eternal things coming directly from God. It's not exactly like this. They are dogmas. Be careful, because if you the first sentence may make you think they are not dogmas, they are sentiments of sociability. Yes, but such sentiments of sociability are formulated then as dogmas, as we can read the line before the last, right? Having publicly accepted these dogmas. So dogmas mean articles of belief, right? These are, you have to believe in these, otherwise you are not in the religion. You have to believe in these, in this case, otherwise you are not in the state, when it's in the state, the civil religion. So, for example, if you don't believe in the Trinity, you really cannot be part of the Catholic Church. This is one of the dogmas of the Catholic Church. You have to follow it. Okay? If you don't believe that there is one God, you believe there are two or three, you cannot be a monotheist. You cannot be Christian, you cannot be Muslim, you cannot be Jewish, right? Etc. You have these, and this God has particular characteristics, of course. If you don't believe in these characteristics and attributes, you cannot be part of that religion. So they are articles, the essential foundational articles of faith, the foundational, what is first, arche, principle. So, there is then, he says, if I go back to the beginning, a purely civil profession of faith, not one based on any religion then, but based on the fact that we are in cities, in a society, civil profession of faith. The articles of which it is the business of the sovereign to determine. And again, the sovereign, as I said, are the people, so it's a representation of the people's will that in the end determines the laws. So the sovereign has to determine these articles of faith. Now, these articles of faith, this profession, the articles of faith that represents this profession of faith, what we say we believe in, right? What you must believe in, they are not, again, like religious dogmas, they are like sentiments of sociabilities. They are sentiments of sociability, sorry. They are sentiments of sociability. It means that they are based on the fact that we live together in a society. And what is important about these sentiments of sociability is that they are specific sentiments, specific feelings, if you like, feelings and thoughts that go together. The word sentiment is very interesting. A sentiment has something of thinking also. It's not just a feeling. So if you can think of it as feeling and thinking at the same time. Sentiment of sociability, those sentiments are the ones that make you a good citizen or loyal subject. This is what's important. So you have to base all these articles on the sentiments of sociability. So each time you write one of these articles, of course the sovereign is doing it, each of these articles has to lead to you being sociable, being in a good life with others, so being a good citizen and a loyal subject. It means you respect others, you respect the laws of the state, and you respect your duties, and you respect the freedom of others. Okay? Now, it's not like taking waging a war and forcing someone to believe in it. This is not a religious war. He says, although the sovereign cannot force anyone to believe them, it's not about forcing people to believe something. So if I come, for example, let's suppose I decide to move to Germany. Germany has laws that express the sentiment of sociability and allow it to continue, and I don't believe in them. For Rousseau, I should not be in that state. Okay? So although it cannot force anyone to believe them, it can banish from the state anyone who does not believe them. So if I say I don't believe them, I'm banished. Okay, go back to where you came from. Or I could be born there, of course, and not believe them. They say you are banished. So why is this such a person banished? So thrown out and told to never come back, so not allowed to come back anymore. He can be banished not for impiety, as we would have it in religion, for not believing, not being pious, no, but being, of course, because there are sentiments of sociability, for being unsociable, or for being incapable of cherishing the laws and justice sincerely, or of sacrificing when necessary even his life for his duty. Okay? So that means that person cannot live with others as we see them in our state, and of course cannot place his duties first toward others and the state, to the point even of course, if there's someone who attacks your state, to go and fight in the army. This is what giving your life for your duty is, giving his life for his duty. If he's not willing to defend that the country he's in, then he cannot be accepted in that country, right? So this is still common. If you become, for example, after living many years in the United States, an American citizen, you know very well that if there is a war that America wages against another country, you have to fight in the army, right? This is your duty, to defend your country. So you could die in the exercise of your duty then. Now, this is for the person who just doesn't believe them, doesn't believe these sentiments of sociability. We banish him. So he's telling us, I don't believe this. Okay. Now, there is someone who is worse, who lies. If he lies about them, doesn't say he doesn't believe them, he says he does, then it's another matter. Rousseau says, and if having publicly accepted these same dogmas, any person conducts himself as if he did not believe them, let him be punished by death. It's like he's lying, in fact, right? You say you accept these dogmas of that come from sentiments of sociability, from the profession, civil profession of faith, and yet you conduct yourself as if you do not believe them, right? You don't care about your country, you don't care about the duties towards others, towards yourself and towards your country. You hide when there is a war with others and don't join the army, etc. And you conduct yourself as if you did not believe them. Then, in this case, you are an enemy of the state for Rousseau. And this is where many find Rousseau controversial, because he says you have to be punished by death. He has committed the greatest crime. He has lied before the law. Okay. Retain this. This is open for debate. I'm not going to give you an answer to this, of course. Rousseau is very radical here. If someone really doesn't believe that he should accept these dogmas that of the civil profession of faith and its articles, then and lies about it, says he does accept them, so he should be killed. He should be sentenced to death, because this is the biggest crime, to lie before the law. The law, why is it a crime? Because the law is sacred. Let's remember, this is a civil profession of faith. This is a civil religion. Okay? So this religion expresses its dogmas in laws. If you don't respect the law of the country, then you are doing something that is the worst to do against the civil religion. Right? This is why he says it has to be punished by death. Now, do we accept this? Do we not accept this? Is someone who really lies about what he believes and flees the army is to be killed, or rather maybe to be punished differently, or to be banished? This is open. Maybe you could think about it and try to comment on this. Okay? But retain how important this particular paragraph is and how controversial. Right, we continue. Drop of water. Page 90 in your reader, 167 in the social contract. The dogmas of the civil religion must be simple and few, so nothing too complex, as you find very often in religious dogmas outside the civil religion. So the dogmas of the civil religion, the articles of faith, if you like, must be simple and few, precisely expressed, without explanations or commentary, since they are simple. The existence of the divinity, powerful, intelligent, beneficent, prescient, it means it knows things before they happen in certain ways, so it can predict the future, prescient. Provident, the life to come, the reward of the just and the punishment of the wicked, the holiness of the laws and the social contract. Such are the positive dogmas. As for those excluded, I limit them to one: intolerance. It belongs to the religions that we have rejected. So, this can be also controversial. So the dogmas are few and simple and easy to. So what are they? He says some positive ones. It means ones that are real, that you can apply. Divinity. Okay, do we really need to believe in a divinity? This is a big question. In the United States, it's still the case. One nation under God, of course. There is a belief in the one God that is expressed highly in the United States and its constitution. Do we need it? I don't know. This is a big question. For Rousseau, it's essential. The existence of a divinity, powerful, intelligent, beneficent, prescient, and provident. So you have to believe in this and in the life to come, the reward of the just, punishment of the wicked. So all of this is interesting because we wonder how they enter into sociability, and do we really need for the sentiments of sociability the existence of a powerful, intelligent, beneficent God who will of course reward the just and punish the wicked, and we wonder. This is a big question for you too. Now, when he says the holiness of the laws, this is something else, that the laws of the state are holy. This is, of course, refers to the paragraph before. If one doesn't respect these laws, this is the biggest treason. So, the holiness of the laws and the social contract. This we can understand. Do we need the ones before? This is an open question. Can we found a nation, that is to say, write a constitution? Like in Lebanon, we have a constitution. Constitution is, of course, a legal document that constitutes, it's a social contract that constitutes a nation, our living together as Lebanese. Is there a need for the powerful, intelligent, beneficent divinity? A big question. The holiness of the laws and the social contract are perhaps more understandable. Such are the positive dogmas. Now, of course, the only negative thing that it can say is not to allow intolerance. So if we look back at the religions that he has said we cannot keep, right? So it's the religions that don't respect others, that don't respect one's duties, that don't respect one's duties to the state, the freedom of others, and so on and so forth. And I told you some religions that say I am better than the other members of the state who are in another religion, and I should not respect them as much. I should only help the people in my religion. This was one of the big problems, of course, that Judaism faced in its history when they were isolated communities in different parts of Europe. It created a kind of figure of intolerance, however imagined it was by the others, who led to the others' intolerance of the Jews. This is a big question, of course. So anyways, the dogmas of the civil religion are these, and they exclude intolerance. We continue. It is a mistake, in my view, to distinguish between civil and theological intolerance. The two are inseparable. Pardon. It is impossible to live at peace with people whom one believes to be damned, going to hell, right? To show them brotherly love would mean hating God, who is punishing them. One has an absolute duty to convert them or to persecute them. Wherever theological intolerance is allowed, it necessarily has some civil effect. No need to read the footnote here. And as soon as it has, the sovereign is no longer the sovereign, even in the secular domain. From then on, the priests are the true masters, and kings no more than their officers. Okay. So he says, let's not distinguish between types of intolerance. Civil intolerance and theological intolerance, based on theos, God, and theological teachings, are the same, are inseparable at least, if not the same, of course, inseparable. Why? Because if theologically you believe that anyone who doesn't believe, for example, you're Jewish, and you believe that anyone who doesn't believe in Judaism is going to hell, this is going to affect how you deal with others, necessarily. So it's going to affect your civil relations. So it's going to lead to civil intolerance, necessarily. So you feel that, and this we have found, and read the history of all religions, they always want to convert others, right? This is a problem for Rousseau. When a religion starts to want to convert others, it wants to convert them. Why? Because for him, that religion believes that other religions are not true. And people, if they stay in them, they are damned. Because otherwise, why do it? If you believe that the people in the other religion will also go to heaven, there is no need to convert them, right? This is Rousseau's point. So, religious intolerance theologically, so from the religions that people practice, and the civil intolerance are so linked, because the theological intolerance always leads to civil intolerance for Rousseau. Okay? And of course, wherever theological intolerance is allowed, so if this is allowed, then it's no longer the heads of the state that are in control of the minds of the people. It's the priests or the sheikhs or the rabbis that are in control of the people. They are the true masters. Okay? You can imagine a Daeshi who lives in Lebanon. Of course he doesn't believe that any Christian is going to go to heaven too. He doesn't even believe the other Muslims will go to heaven, right? Daeshi. So he's either going to force others to convert or kill the others. We know that. His master is his sheikh teaching him, not the president and prime minister and the speaker of the house and so on in Lebanon. He doesn't care about those, right? Another drop of water to finish, and I think this should be sufficient for today. The last paragraph, page 90, of course, again. Now that there is no longer and cannot be an exclusive national religion, all those which tolerate other religions ought to be tolerated, and to the extent that their dogmas contain nothing contrary to the duties of the citizen. But anyone who dares to say there is no salvation outside the church must be expelled from the state, unless the church is the state and is pontiff the ruler. Such a dogma is of value only under a theocratic government. Under any other it is pernicious. The reason for which Henry IV is said to have embraced the religion of Rome ought to have made any honorable man leave it, and especially a ruler capable of rational argument. Okay? So, there is no exclusive national religion. There is no religion that will be the religion of the state under the civil, along with the civil religion. What we can say then is that, so under the civil religion and the state that has a civil religion, we can ask, what religions then should we accept? Well, very simply, says Rousseau, all religions. All religions. As long as they tolerate other religions and they don't have dogmas that go against the state, that go against, in other words, what the citizens' duties in the state are. If they have dogmas that go against the duties of the citizen, for example, to defend their country. You know, there was a very controversial thing happening in Europe, for example, or in America too, when there was the draft in America, or in Europe when army was compulsory. It happened, for example, with Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses refused to serve in the army. This was a big controversial question, highly debated. Can we accept them as citizens of the country? Should they be punished in some way? Should there be prison and so on? Of course, not to the extent of death, as Rousseau would have it. Rousseau would just say you have to kill them, right? You have to condemn them to death, sentence them to death, because they are not doing their duty to the state. Okay? They say that they respect the state, but in a way they lie, because when it comes to fighting for the state, they refuse. So it's like lying before the law, right? So this was, of course, for a while, a very controversial issue for this religion, how to deal with this religion, whose members actually respected very much the laws of each state they were in, but they refused. They refused things like blood, of course, but more importantly, they refused to fight for the state they lived in. Okay? They were in some ways closer to that original Christianity, where you see everyone as your brother in the world, and of course, if you see everyone as your brother, you're not going to fight your brother. And if you remember, we said, Rousseau says, such a religion cannot really be good for the state, because it leads its members to not being committed very much to the state, and even more in this case, because they won't even fight. I mean, the example Rousseau gives, of course, is that they will fight, but without enthusiasm, without patriotism. Here they don't even fight. So it was, of course, this was a big question for them. All right, so we tolerate any religion as long as its dogmas contain nothing contrary to the duties of the citizen. Now, he says, but if anyone even dares to say there is no salvation outside the church, in other words, you can only be saved if you are Catholic, then we have a problem. You're going to say then, I have to convert you, and this is the only way to be saved. This leads to intolerance. So, Rousseau says, if someone says this, he must, of course, be expelled from the state. Unless, rare occasion, the church is the state. Of course, we know this exists. This is the Vatican. Rousseau is thinking of the Vatican. If you live in the Vatican, of course, the church is the state. So, but this is such a rare occasion. So, unless the church is the state and its pontiff, basically the Pope is the ruler in this example. But there could be other examples. We can think of Iran as a theocracy. Such a dogma is of value only under theocratic government then. When the church is the state, under any other, it is bad, pernicious. The reason for which Henry IV is said to have a base room, etc. Okay. And Rousseau ends with the chapter 9, having set down the true principles of political right, attempted to lay the basis of the foundation for the foundation of the state. It remains for me to give it stability in its external relations. This is what he will do later and does not involve us here. So we end Rousseau's development on what he calls the civil religion. What are the elements of this religion? We saw how does it function, its profession of faith. There are things about it that seem very natural to say, others that may lead us to question whether we need every single item, however simple it is in it or not. And of course, there is some really important things there that are still applied today, especially on the question of tolerance and intolerance. There is controversial issues on the question of what punishment someone who lies about respecting the laws should have. And I want you to reflect on these things. Reflect on these things. So we stop here for today, and next week we are going to get into Emile, from Emile, and I'd like you to write a homework. Please make sure it's about a half page to a page. Half page to a page. Read what he says on the dogmas of the civil religion. They must be simple and few. Read what he says about tolerance and intolerance and so on. And write, this is your homework, write what you think would be a good civil profession of faith. So it's articles. Write a good, what you consider to be a good civil profession of faith. Thank you, and I'll talk to you again next Wednesday.